Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Arash, for inviting me and that much too generous introduction. I'm the one that has to follow the incredible Giuseppe, so you should all feel a little bit bad for me. I love leaving Washington, D.C., and connecting with communities who are eager to learn and ready to roll up their sleeves to really tackle the issue of youth homelessness. So let me tell you a little bit about the National Network for Youth. Raise your hand if you haven't heard of the National Network for Youth. All right, about half. So I have the honor of directing the National Network for Youth. We're an over 40-year-old organization dedicated envisioning a future in which every young person has a safe place to call home. We do this work collaboratively. There's no way we're going to achieve the progress that we want to alone. So we partner with youth service providers all over the country who are our members. We also partner with young people who've experienced homelessness through our National Youth Advisory Council. These partnerships ensure that our work is grounded, not just in research, but in what is actually happening on the ground in communities and in the lives of young people. Together, we craft common sense policy solutions that young people are facing today, and then together we advocate for their adoption and their implementation. We also produce practice and training resources and to really share the most effective strategies to preventing homelessness, as well as to effectively responding to young people experiencing homelessness when it does occur. So what am I going to talk about today? First, I'm going to spend some time talking about youth homelessness nationally from an American, where we are in America today. Then I'm going to share some strategies that work. What is effective at reaching, connecting, and serving young people at risk of and experiencing homelessness? Then I'm going to talk a little bit about one of our federal policy campaigns. And then finally, I'm going to make some specific recommendations for you all in the room for you to consider and hopefully take action on. So I want to start by just ensuring that we're all on the same page when we are talking about young people experiencing homelessness or homeless youth. When I use that terminology, I'm talking about 13 to 24-year-olds who experience any form of homelessness unaccompanied by a parent, a legal guardian, or a responsible adult. Homelessness is a fluid experience for many young people, and how it looks varies. You've heard some of this already from some of the speakers that have gone before. Homelessness can look like a young person bouncing from place to place because they have nowhere to live. This is a very invisible or hidden form of homelessness. Other times it looks like a young person staying in abandoned buildings, riding public transportation at night to be safe, staying on rooftops. These forms of homelessness are also pretty hidden. Homelessness for young people also looks like how most people picture homelessness, visible on the streets, in abandoned buildings, or in cars. What I want to underscore, which really builds on what others have already said, is that homelessness is a situation, and it provides no indication of aptitude, abilities, or personal desires. Now, people are always shocked when they learn that over 1 million young people experience homelessness in America each year. That 1.6 million. And this is likely an underestimate. And we're actually going to know a lot more in about 2 weeks when Chapin Hall releases the findings of their national study on the number, characteristics, and needs of runaway and homeless youth in America. It's the first of its kind national research. It's groundbreaking, and it's really going to inform our work. Now, people are shocked by the number because it's a big number. But then people always ask why. Why are there young people who are homeless in America? Especially when I go internationally. They don't understand. So this is a graphic, and this is, quite similar to what you've heard. But there are a number of different contributing factors, and often several of these factors are taking place at once that really lead to a young person experiencing homelessness. Family conflict, behavioral disorders, out-of-home placements, physical or sexual abuse, violence, substance use and/or mental illness, usually on the part of a parent, family rejection, and this is rejection based on sexual orientation, gender identity, but also for young girls who become pregnant, they get kicked out. Also economic reasons, poverty, and not finishing high school. These are all kind of drivers for young people to experience homelessness. And then if you look at the systems I have at the bottom, young people fall through the cracks of multiple systems. I've included 4 here. Either because of the contributing factors that I included above lead young people to become involved in these systems, or we know that a large number of young people who are experiencing homelessness still show up to school, like Giuseppe, whether it's for food or because they see education as their way out of homelessness. The important point here is that each of these systems has a role to play, and that each system's policies, practices, and priorities will determine if the young people in their care get the services they need to either avoid homelessness or to exit homelessness. Because homelessness is often understood through an adult lens, and because the bulk of homelessness funding is delivered through an adult system, HUD, we need to ground ourselves in these truths because they should inform our work together as we seek to address youth homelessness. Young people are still developing. They often enter homelessness with little to no work experience. They're often forced to leave their education prior to its completion, and experience very high rates of victimization, both before homelessness and while homeless. They often enter homelessness without ever having lived by themselves or being responsible for a household. This means they often lack the life skills needed to live on their own, like grocery shopping, budgeting, cleaning, cooking. And young people are often still negotiating ongoing complicated relationships with their family. As illustrated before, young people experiencing homelessness often work really hard to avoid detection because they fear what certain systems would do to them or label them as bad kids. What young people in homelessness situations want is what we all want: safety, stability, people in our lives who care about us and support us. They also really want food. I feel like we don't talk about this enough. They are hungry all the time, and we need to elevate that. They also want access and the ability to reach their fullest potential in life. So what can we do? Because hopefully you're all here because you want to do something. So this is the goal that I posit should drive our work: that young people are able to access what they need when they need it to either avoid homelessness, it's called prevention, or to quickly exit homelessness when it does occur. We've done a lot of work documenting and pushing out information about what works to prevent and end youth homelessness in America, which I will talk about. However, I cannot emphasize enough that there is not a one-size-fits-all approach that works for all young people and all communities. What has become crystal clear over the past few years as HUD has shifted its attention to youth homelessness is that you cannot successfully take a housing model or approach that was created for adults and merely repackage it by changing the font or color, and not change anything of substance in the service delivery provided to young people and expect successful outcomes. Young people are not many adults, and housing is not their only need or issue. Homelessness for young people is not just about housing. Therefore, our response cannot just be about housing. But housing is important. How homelessness looks for young people, it varies and it's fluid. So it doesn't look the same day to day or week to week. Therefore, community strategies need to be responsive to these realities. And I propose that every community should create a youth-centric service continuum that focuses on preventing homelessness, focuses on decreasing reoccurrence of homelessness episodes, and that provides youth-appropriate housing and services. And this system needs to be responsive to the unique needs of youth. There needs to be flexibility among the different parts of the system, meaning if one housing model isn't working for a young person, they should be able to move to another one to try without the system or the program or the provider being penalized. And we should also expect some young people to exit and re-enter multiple times. As was talked about, young people, they're trying to figure out if they can trust you as service providers. And maybe they're not trusting you the first time or the second time, but maybe the third time they will. And because you keep opening your doors and letting them return, that helps build that trusting relationship. And to truly create this system that I'm going to be talking about more in depth, investments are needed from a federal, a state, and local government level, as well as philanthropic and corporate partners. Again, every community is unique, so the strategies that you employ to do the following should really be driven by the needs of young people in your community. You should be asking them, talking to them. They should be driving your work. However, any youth-centric system should include locally driven strategies in each of the following buckets. You need to have prevention. This is about preventing young people from even experiencing homelessness, from running away from home, from being kicked out, from exiting systems that we know exit young people to homelessness. Also, early and crisis intervention strategies. This means finding young people as quickly as possible after they become homeless in its various forms and connecting them to short-term housing or appropriate services, really kind of grabbing them and bringing into our care as quickly as possible. Because we know gangs and traffickers these young people are very vulnerable to that. And I had a young woman say to me once that her pimp didn't have a wait list. And that stays with me. We need to have longer-term housing with supportive services because not all young people can go home. Some can. With appropriate family intervention services and crisis services, strength-based family responses, some young people can go home or find another safe family member to live with, but not all can. So there needs to be longer-term housing options with supportive services available for the young people who need it. And then we need to have aftercare. So you reunify a young person with their mom, or a young person exits your program to their own apartment. Maybe they have a roommate. They're likely going to need ongoing support and services. Maybe, they get behind on paying their bills, or their trauma, they have a trauma trigger and they need some more services or case management. Being there, being able to help them out with rent or services after they've exited your program, or even allow them back in, is critical to preventing reoccurring episodes of homelessness. So we talk about a youth-centric system. I kind of did this model here, pretty similar to what you were seeing before, but kind of picturing something different. So when I talk about a youth-centric system, I talk about a system created for young people by putting young people at the center. I'm not talking about trying to fit young people into adult or children-created systems. So that young person is holding a sign saying, I'm not a child, I'm not an adult, They're at a unique developmental stage in life. And at a minimum, the system needs to provide healthcare, housing, food, services, money, resources, education, workforce development, and linkages between systems. And what I mean is referrals between systems, planning between systems, and resource sharing among the different systems. Also, consistently across the nation, we've really documented 10 strategies that have been shown time and time again to be critical to provide as part of a community response to youth homelessness. So, prevention and outreach to connect youth to services. Again, when young people experience homelessness, they're not like, I'm looking for a program. I need to find a program to help me, right? They're thinking about survival. So how do we proactively let young people know where they can get the help that they need? Drop-in centers to engage young people and link them to resources. Shelter to provide an important first step off the street, off a couch, out of a car. Family engagement and interventions when it's safe and appropriate and possible. Not all young people have family to do interventions with. Also, youth-appropriate housing programs to build independent living skills. Case management to improve wellness and decision-making. Connection to education or reconnection to education to increase future income capability. Workforce development to enable young people to compete in the job market. Culturally competent services to effectively care for young people of all cultures. And services that respond to human trafficking, because we know young people who experience homelessness are at high risk of both sex and labor trafficking, and we need to be prepared and trained to care for these young people well. Now, I want to talk about 4 necessary components, from my humble opinion, that is needed to create a youth-centric system. And I want to offer some suggestions and steps for you all to consider here to take in Southern Nevada. First, local leadership and strategic community planning and coordination. Second, aligned access to programs for youth when they need it. 3, needs-based investment in youth-targeted services and housing. And 4th, collaboration across agencies and systems so that each system and program does their part to address the distinct needs of young people. So first, I want to talk about local leadership and strategic community planning and coordination. Local leadership is critical because without it, the needs of young people experiencing homelessness can become this hot potato that everyone's passing around and no one ends up holding, owning, or taking responsibility for. Who are your leaders here? Who is working and advocating for the real needs of young people? I believe that Arash is one of your local leaders, right? Look what him and his team have done in organizing this summit. Who are your other leaders? Who in this room should step up? I encourage you to answer these questions and give these people power. Listen to them, honor their expertise and leadership, and take your cues as a community from them. Of course, a handful of folks alone will not accomplish what needs to be accomplished. Communities have to come together, roll up their sleeves, and engage in real and impactful strategic community planning and coordination. And I don't mean a token strategic plan to meet a funder requirement. I mean the real thing, where there is community-wide buy-in and there is accountability in its implementation. I recommend that the state of Nevada consider taking these 4 steps to tackle youth homelessness from a state level. And I recommend that Southern Nevada as a community takes these steps to tackle youth homelessness from a community level. To create a community and state plan to end youth homelessness and track success. First, you gotta convene a community-wide working group. Second, which I guess is happening, I learned this morning, great. Second, you need to conduct a community needs assessment. Who are the young people in need of services and where do they show up? You have a great grasp because of the university researchers on the numbers as it relates from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, PIT count, and the Department of Education. But like was stated this morning, there's young people missing from those numbers. So as you get better at conducting a community needs assessment and really counting the number of young people at risk of or experiencing homelessness, you can expect the number to go up for the first few years as you're getting better at finding and counting young people. And this is a good sign. That's a good thing. That's what we want. We want you to find all the young people in need of services. Then you need to create a measurable plan. And some key components for a measurable plan are you need to have goals. As a community, you need to define your goals. And then you have to establish outcomes at a few levels. Individual outcomes, sectoral outcomes, program outcomes, community outcomes. And then you need to create time-limited benchmarks. And you should include, recommendations and strategies for federal, state, local, philanthropic, and corporate investments and partnerships. Because really, you're gonna need some more money to make this happen. Let's not beat around the bush about that. And then you need to assess progress on achieving the goals in your plan, and then you should make adjustments to your plan based on progress that you've made and lessons that you've learned. This may sound like a lot, but this is doable. Communities have done this. They've taken these steps, and it has had a pretty big impact on their community and state approaches to youth homelessness. I believe that you can take these steps and that you can do that here. Need to. Earlier, I talked about the different forms of homelessness that young people face. Different programs have different eligibility requirements. Some allow youth who experience any form of homelessness to access their programs. Other programs have more limited eligibility requirements and only accept some forms of homelessness into their programs. In order to truly build a youth-centric program, you need to be clear on who you're building the system for. And I recommend that you build a system that includes prevention and that includes serving young people who experience any form of homelessness. And to do so, you need to ensure that there's quick access to high quality and developmentally appropriate services whenever it's needed. Please do not require that young people suffer prolonged and detrimental lengths of homelessness before they're allowed to access the housing or services that they need. No one knows better what a community needs to prevent and end youth homelessness than the leaders and young people in each community. Federal funding is great, but federal funding alone is not going to provide all of the resources needed to create and scale up the type of community system that young people need. Actually, significantly less than $400 million nationally goes to fund housing and services for runaway and homeless youth in America. This is far from meeting the need. Also, federal policies can be great, but they need to be flexible so that communities can use federal dollars in a way that is driven by their local plans and community counts and include all the different forms of homelessness that young people experience. State and local policies and leadership are critical, both in providing funding, but also in providing leadership. The states and communities that have the most robust and effective responses to youth homelessness have passed state laws that created an Office on Homeless Youth, and these offices provide state funding for services and housing for young people at risk of and experiencing homelessness. These state laws also give minors rights, so the right to consent to enter housing and services. Also, communities, cities, counties, with the most robust responses for young people experiencing homelessness have passed laws that created city or county offices on youth homelessness that has funding that they distribute to community-based organizations to provide housing and services. Taking all of these steps, having these policies, these offices, these funding streams, really are essential to truly creating and scaling up an effective youth-centric system that both prevents and responds swiftly and effectively to youth homelessness. Fourth, collaboration and coordination across agencies and systems is critical. You heard this from the researchers this morning. We need to do better at ensuring that no young person falls through the cracks of an often fractured and disconnected systems that our young people are in, that they show up in, like child welfare, education systems, juvenile, criminal justice, mental health care systems. Real coordination and collaboration across agencies so that each system and program does their part. They're clear on what their part is, they know who they're collaborating with, and they're doing it. And that they are addressing the distinct needs of young people to ensure that no young person who encounters their system is more likely to experience homelessness or exits their system to homelessness. Now I want to tell you briefly a little bit about some of our federal policy work, what's happening at the national level in the youth homelessness space. We advocate at the National Network for Youth for common sense solutions to address the most pressing issues young people and communities are facing while trying to really be effective at preventing and ending youth and young adult homelessness. So one of the key pieces of legislation that we work on is the Homeless Children and Youth Act. This is a bipartisan, bicameral bill that is really about updating and improving the HERTH Act so that HUD homelessness assistance grant policies are more youth-centric and the programs funded with this funding become accessible to all young people experiencing homelessness. This legislation was introduced in the last session of Congress. It was also introduced at the very beginning of this session of Congress. Hopefully I'm not getting too wonky. Each session of Congress is 2 years. Our champions are Senator Feinstein, Senator Portman, and Congressman Stivers and Congressman Lobasek. So what does it do, right? So it would amend HUD's definition of homelessness so that if you are considered homeless by the U.S. Department of Education, the Runaway and Homeless Youth Act, Head Start, Health Care for the Homeless, Violence Against Women Act program, all these other federal programs with targeted services for homeless populations. If you're considered homeless by their definition, you would be eligible for HUD homelessness assistance. Also, funding allocation would be guided by local needs assessment. And it would require that data from all the different federal programs would be included in HUD's report to Congress. This is important because the point-in-time count, that really is pretty good at capturing visible homelessness, street homelessness, but it doesn't include by statute or practice the hidden and invisible, the other forms of homelessness that are more hidden and invisible. It's supported by over 400 organizations, 59 of them are national. The bulk of the organizations that are really excited about this legislation and want to see it become law are youth service providers across the country who grapple with the barriers of these different definitions at a local and community level. We have lots of other campaigns and work. If you want to learn about our other federal policy campaigns, you can visit our website. I won't say it out loud, it'll be probably too boring. But definitely go to our website. We also have a lot of other resources that you can use here. You're not the first community to be grappling with what you're grappling with. We have model legislation that we've drafted, Model Runaway and Homeless Youth Act legislation that states, cities, counties have used. Basically, it's just a model bill that you can amend and use, and it creates an office on homeless youth. It creates funding streams, grant programs for housing and services. We also have several cornerstone publications that we have co-authored with youth service providers from across the country and researchers and young people. What Works to End Youth Homelessness, What We Know Now. We published that in 2014. Our proposed system to prevent and end youth and young adult homelessness. We also published that in 2014, and we released an updated version in 2016. It's available on our website. Now, I want to close by imploring you all to take action. Sometimes I speak at events or participate in meetings, and nothing actually ends up changing or happening. Shake your head if that has ever happened to you. Right? Your chuckle tells me all I need to know. But each one of you in this room are responsible for ensuring that something does happen, that action is taken in this community, in Southern Nevada, and in the state of Nevada. Frankly, I'm encouraged because of the number of people in this room. You've traveled here from different parts of the state, from outside of the state. You've given your time and your attention to this issue, which indicates that something's going to happen. I'm also encouraged because the Nevada Partnership for Homeless Youth, under Arash's leadership and Sands Cares and the incredible teams, have put this incredible event together. I mean, this is inspiring, instructive, and it's a very practical summit. So I hope that you all together take most of the actions that I've recommended today, because I know from other communities across this country that they work, that it's effective. And I urge you to partner with young people. Put them at the center of your work. Ensure that they are guiding your planning, that they're giving a thumbs up to what you want to do. Together, we can ensure that every young person in Southern Nevada has a safe place to call home. And I want to leave you with a little bit of inspiration, because we all need inspiration. 10 people who speak make more noise than 10,000 who are silent. Thank you so much.